Welcome to Childcare Conversations with Kate and Carrie.
Sometimes those trainings that you send your staff to did nothing and nothing changed, or it only changed for a week.
Well, I mean, it did do something. You spent money and they get to check off that they got the training that is required for licensing. Now, is that what we wanted to happen? No. We also wanted it to change their knowledge base and hopefully some behaviors, some skills. But at least we did get some licensing compliance and a slightly lighter checkbook.
Well,
So we
yeah,
did
we can
something.
always, we always have the checkbook. So let's talk about this, Carrie. I mean, we all know, and if you have been in the industry for even, 6 months, you're aware that there is professional development in our industry. And the pretty standard professional development in education from literally 0 to 16 is some sort of just one day, one time training. Now, sometimes you do see opportunities for certifications, and sometimes those certifications are a little longer. But a lot of times what we're missing is the accountability and the follow through and the behavior change. And so I know when, we sit down and you listen to these episodes, we're kind of part of that. You've taken 20 minutes out of your day and maybe there's not a behavior change. And I think that it's worth kind of, I'm not going to call a spade, maybe, Carrie. And one of the things that we would really like to talk about today is what should that follow-up look like? Whose job is that follow-up after the training? What are some things that you can do if you guys took a virtual training independently versus maybe a face-to-face as a whole school? So with that, Carrie, what are some things that programs have done to kind of keep content relevant and even add to some accountability internally? What are some of the things folks have done that you've worked with?
Well, so what I love is before they go to the training, the staff to write down what they're hoping to get out of the training so that they're actually subconsciously looking for that information while they're in the training, whether it's virtual, whether it's reading a book, whether it's going to a conference, whether it's having someone come in to the program. All of these are good forms of professional development for some learners. Some of these are going to work better for different kinds of learners. But having people do the reflection part, which is part of best practices, right? We're supposed to have reflective learning. So first we have to start with, where do we want to go? What are we hoping to get? And then people go to different sessions if you're at a conference, or people, whether they're all in the same room or watching the same video, they're going to have different takeaways. So,
okay, but what if I don't want to be there to begin with, Carrie?
Well, we've had those people. And that's really fun as a presenter, because Kate and I take sick pleasure in when we have the people who like literally put their notebook in front of their faces like they're in high school, and we go over and walk and stand right next to those people. And we're not the only ones who do it. I actually had a conversation about this with another national and international speaker, and she will go and stand right by them too. So it's not just us, Kate. We're not the only ones who do it. And then she went and tattled. She went and told their boss that they should not get credit for that session because they did not learn, they were not engaged, and all of that. So if the person...
I did that a couple of weeks ago. I did a webinar for a workforce board. So again, this is an organization that pays money to trainers, and staff get to go to it for free. And I told people from the time they logged in that when we broke out into breakout rooms, they needed to go to the breakout room and participate. And that if they didn't, I would basically count them as not being present.
Yep.
Because you have to be able to engage. And I know that people have gotten really comfortable with not having cameras on their screen, but that does you as a student such a disservice. And it's even more of a disservice to your peers and to the presenter. So, you know what? If you know you're going to do an online training, unless you are actually eating food, turn your camera on, or at least turn it on so at least people see the top of your head. You know, you can be eating down here. You know, there is absolutely no reason. We've all learned how to dress for Zoom, you know, fancy on the top and sweats on the bottom if you're working from home. But
But again, the question is, what are your staff doing? I mean, yes, it's also for us as the
But
leaders.
you gotta model the behavior, right?
You
So
do.
you can't expect your staff to do something that you're not willing to do. So, okay. So
Oh,
we know that
okay. No.
eh,
You just hit a nerve because the centers that hire us, and we're not cheap. We are not $50 an hour to come out and do your training. We're a little bit more than that. And they hire us to come out, and in the back of the room, the admin team have the only comfortable chairs in the room, and they're chit-chatting all throughout our training. What
or
does that
sometimes they're not even in the back of the room. I've had some that they're right dead smack in the front, and a lot of times they're in the front and to the side.
and
Yes,
they're on
I
their
was trying not
phones,
to go there.
and they're chit-chatting, and here's the thing, what are you demonstrating to your staff?
Yep.
If you're showing your staff that you can be playing what Candy Crush on your phone during a training because you're in the front and you're playing Candy Crush, what does that tell your staff? If you are showing by being in the back of the room and talking with the other members of the admin team and you're chit-chatting about classroom behaviors, what are you showing your staff? If you're feeling called out right now, I'm okay with that. If you're going to hire someone to come in as a trainer, or you're going to go to a conference, you need to model for your staff what you want them to be doing. And if you're not going to learn anything in that session, don't go. I don't want to give you a training certificate for you having a gossip fest in the back. And I think I've just decided that I'm not going to. If corporate hired me and the admin staff were in the back gossiping, I'm not giving them training certificates, and I'm going to tell corporate. Just made a decision. That's what I'm doing. Um, but how do we help staff to be more engaged, whether it's an online training, an in-person training at your center, or going to a conference? What are some things, Kate, that they can do to help the staff understand why they should be engaged?
Well,
What
I
can they
think
do?
this is not even just a staff. So I'm going to start with just a little step backwards, which is, what are your own personal professional development goals? So, you know, we have a director credential that allows you to become a better leader. We have training specifically for directors that you can take either in a 30-hour swatch, or you can do take monthly. But if you haven't sat down and done goal setting with your staff, how do you even know what makes sense for them to be doing? Do they know what licensing or compliance issues they've had in their classroom and what maybe they need to take some workshops in and why? So, yeah, absolutely do that pre-planning, do that reflecting. But before you invest the money in professional development for your staff, and again, it can't be a one-time thing. If you've got a classroom full of kids with behavior issues, doing a 1-hour self-taken online course is not going to help you the same way a 3-session over 3 months with an online facilitator, you're going to get a very different response. Is it going to be a different price? Yes. But what makes more sense? A free workshop on behavior issues
That's
to a
going to try
teacher
to address everything from infants throwing their food to school agers making out in the back of the room. And they're going to try to do all of that in an hour.
and then
I
you've
don't
got
think so.
no, and then you've got the price difference between free and having an expert hold your staff accountable over 3 sessions. And yeah, it may only be, under 10 hours. So we're not talking about life-changing time, but it could absolutely be life-changing for that staff person. And I think the ultimate goal of professional development is making your staff love their job, right? We want that joy, and we can't, Carrie and I can only do so much with Play-Doh, right? Like we can only tell you need Play-Doh. We can only tell you should have Legos. We can only tell you that your staff need to learn to play bubbles and blow bubbles and play and have a good time. But if they are stressed out because kids keep touching the floor or touching each other after they wash their hands, and that drives them crazy, let's help them find the training and the resources that work the way they learn for the issues they're having.
Yep. And I get the budget constraints, but your highest expense in childcare is your staff. Do you want to have good staff or cruddy staff? I want them to have good staff. So not only do we need to think about that, but we also want to make sure that the money we're spending is actually being impactful. And how do we do that? We have them think about what they want to get out of it beforehand, go over any licensing compliance issues that you might need to deal with, and tailor the learning to the way they learn. And then here's the thing, they're done with the training. How do we put that into action? And this is true for the directors and owners as well. We get lots of great training. Kate and I provide you good I think fantastic training. But
like 40 hours, like 40 minutes a week. Like,
yep. How do we help you? Like, how do you actually put it into action? And as soon as people are done with a training session, whether it's listening to a podcast, whether it is, again, any of those other ways of learning that we've talked about, take notes, give yourself 3 action items. What are 3 things that you have learned from that thing? Don't try to remember everything. It was a 4-hour workshop. You're not going to remember everything. 3 things. What are 3 things I learned? And make at least one of those an action item. So in this one, I would suggest one of your action items is to learn the learning styles of your different members of staff.
And help them learn.
And
their
help them
learning
learn,
style.
right? So that
hey, we have a we could come out and do the Who is Your Best Self workshop. Okay, so shameless plug. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Carrie.
So do that as one of your action items from this podcast. I don't know what your other takeaways are, but I'm going to tell you that should be one of them. But at the end, so we write our notes, our 3 notes, and then you set a calendar reminder to look at it in 2 weeks, because sometimes it just has to percolate in your head for a while. And then you can go back and look at your notes 2 weeks later and be like, oh, this totally hits different now that I've been doing one of the 3 things I said I was going to for 3 weeks. And that one thing has made this difference. What if I did all 3 things? Or if I took all of them on board?
Okay, so we've talked about a couple of different things. We've talked about looking for training and training providers that offer things in a series. We have talked about taking your own notes and reflection and creating kind of your own quasi accountability, or your teachers creating some accountability. But the other thing that I am seeing become more and more popular, which I absolutely love, is program-based book clubs. And these book clubs, as an admin team, there are a lot of coaches and consultants across the country. Associations in different states are hosting these book clubs. We have discussion questions available for book clubs for several of our books. So if you are, if you've ever bought one of our books or interested in one of our books, we do have book club discussion questions because it allows the leadership, and it can be leadership from multiple programs, to have some of that dialogue and discussion. And what's great is it is just what we just talked about. It is bite size. So you're reading a chapter or 2, you discuss it, you talk about maybe what worked, what didn't work, why that is hard for you to make that transition, or maybe why it's easy for you to make that transition, or maybe it doesn't apply at all. All of those things kind of work really well into a book club discussion. And the book clubs can be weekly, they can be monthly, they can be 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. It kind of depends on the book, Carrie, don't you think? Because I don't think there's a standard formula for that. I've seen some small books take 6 months because people only meet once a month. And although the chapters are fairly short, there's a lot to think about and you got to like
Yeah.
kind of
And
process it.
I think doing a book club, sort of like you might have with your friends, where you read one book and then you all get together, that's not what we're talking about here. So let's just clarify that a little bit. So it's more like a book club that Kate and I are in, where we're reading a book that is several thousand pages. Um, and so we're taking months and months and months to read it. We just went to a book club that was the first 6 chapters. And then the next one is the next 5 chapters. And so it's meeting once a month to talk about part of the book, because I've been in plenty of book clubs. Well, probably not as many as other people, but I've been in like 3 or 4 that we spend 15 minutes talking about the book, or maybe a half an hour, and then another hour and a half talking about our personal lives, and people are drinking some wine and having some cheese and some crackers. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about um, doing a section of the book and really talking about it. And if you only can get 30 or 40 minutes of discussion out of it, cool. Get 30 or 40 minutes out of the discussion. And you can then give yourselves training certificates for how much of the book you read. And that amount of time of discussion depends on your state as to how that all works. If you live in Nevada, you can't do this. But in many other states, as long as there's goals and objectives and you have a learning activities and a way to assess, did anybody learn anything, you can do those training certificates. But
Well,
even if you
and
can't get a training certificate, you can still have learned some stuff, which I
well,
think
and
is the
there's a
important
lot of
thing.
absolutely. And there's a lot of books. Childcare Conversations has a Pinterest board. And on our Pinterest board, there's something called the Director's Bookshelf. And there we have all kinds of books from all kinds of folks. Like it's not just our books, it's other early learning leaders, it's other female leaders. There's leadership books by Brene Brown and by Sheryl Sandberg and like other customer service books. There's some Disney customer service books. So all kinds of books on that Pinterest board. But what's great is if you see those authors, Google something, like literally type in book club discussion questions and Google not AI, because AI might lie to you and just give you questions that it thinks might work. So, so actually put it into Google and see if somebody already has discussion questions on that book. Sometimes those books have actually been made into even TEDx talks. And so you might even be able to have a 15-minute TED talk about a book that might not cover the whole book. It might only cover a chapter or two, but it might be a great way to launch that discussion. So we have given you some ways to hire people in asking people to deliver things in series. We have shared with you I love Carrie's concept about pre-planning and then self-reflection and self-accountability. So how to get the most out of those conferences that you're already paying to go to, or even free training provided by your state or local associations or regional and state associations. And then the third one that we gave you as a potential option is group book clubs that go over time. So yes, so like Carrie said, and I mentioned also, which is these are not a one and done type of a book club. So these are book clubs that meet over a series of weeks or months on the same book, and you get to kind of digest them and have little nuggets a little bit at a time. So
Kind of like a CDA class where you go over the course maybe of a whole year and you're learning a little bit about different parts of the CDA book. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. So hopefully that's given you some help on ways to think about training, because a one and done training isn't going to do anything other than, like Carrie said, lighten your pocketbook that was one you had to pay for or check a box. And after a while, your staff are going to get tired of checking that box for anywhere from, depending on your state, 10 to 40 hours a year of professional development. There's a pretty wide range in our industry across the country as far as what states require. But try to figure out how to make this more than just checking a box. And with that, Go to our website, childcareconversations.com, and go sign up and join our newsletter. If you don't know that our podcast has a newsletter that comes out with every episode, and we can't wait to talk to you in a few days.
Thanks for tuning in. We love bringing you real talk and fresh insight from the world of early childhood education. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay connected and catch all of the latest episodes. And if you're planning a conference, training, or special event, Kate and Carrie would love to speak to your audience. You can learn more about their keynote sessions and workshops at kateandcarrie.com. If you learned something today, share the show and leave us a review below. We'll see you next time on Childcare Conversations.